Welcome for this webinar on Better Remittance Data for Better Decision. This is the first of two sessions we'll be hosting at UNCDF. The first one today is about Latin America and the Caribbean, and tomorrow it would be about Western Balkans. Let's just see the agenda quickly. So we started a bit late because of this technical issue, but I'm gonna, give a few logistic notes first. Then we'll move to the opening remark from my colleague Ibish. Then we'll have a presentation and panel discussion. And we'll present the UNCDF reference guide, and we'll share everything in the chat. If we go now to the logistics, so we have interpretation channels in English and Spanish. It should be at the, below your screen. There's a Q&A session during this webinar, so please use it if you have any question and mention the panelist or the speaker you'd like to interrogate. And this webinar is currently being recorded. We'll share it along with the presentation and few documents after this webinar with all registered participants. So without any further ado, let me pass the floor to Ibish, my colleague, who's going to give the introduction word and present the esteemed speakers we have today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining the webinar today. This is a series of webinars, continuation from the last year webinar on Better Remittances Data for Better Decision Making. Thank you very much for finding the time and for being here in this webinar today. My name is Ibish Kasrati, first of all, working as a remittance policy specialist here at UNCDF. For the Migration and Remittances program. We have been working with central banks for on remittances data for last year. We've been consulting with over 70 central banks and national statistics offices around the world to gather information on remittances reporting systems that they have in place. And we were expanding our knowledge and insights on the nature of the problems and the opportunities for solutions that these central banks have implemented or can implement in the future to improve remittances, data collection systems, and analysis, especially focusing on least developed countries that we've been working with. Why are we working in this area? Is to better understand the regulators' role and their challenges and needs to build and use technology for the collection of the data on cross-border remittances and the compilation and reporting of balance of payment systems. In this process, it's been our pleasure to have cooperated with central banks around the world, and we have learned a lot from their knowledge and their sharing of their systems that they have in place for improving this data, including many central banks from African region, including Angola, Botswana, Comoros, Egypt, and other IGAD countries, and also other regions as Asia, including Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, and others. To understand more about some of the more advanced systems on remittances reporting systems, we also included in our consultation about 15 central banks from European Union countries, including Belarus, Iceland, Latvia, and 6 other Western Balkan countries as well. And we expanded our consultations also with the Americas region, central banks such as Brazil, Chile, Colombia, and Dominican Republic, and also we've consulted with Samoa from Oceania. So the range of institutions that we've cooperated and consulted with in the last year has given us the opportunity to learn more about the systems that they have in place on measuring remittances. And in that regard, we have have the pleasure to introduce today's panelists, that they will be presenting their remittance systems and that they have in place, and how those remittances systems have helped them improve the data on remittances and capture the data for the balance of payment purposes, and present also their challenges and lessons learned from these systems. So today we are honored to have in our panel representatives from the central banks of Latin American countries, Suriname, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, and Angola. With us here today is Ms. Wendy Marcus, economist from External Sector, Central Bank of Suriname, Xiomara Hurtado, Head of External Sector Statistics, Central Bank of El Salvador, and Victor Javier Nicolas Milade, Deputy Director from Balance of Payment, Central Bank of Dominican Republic, and last but not the least, Ms. Sarina Pimentel Alves, Head of Balance of Payment and International Investment, National Bank of Angola. Now I will pass on the floor to Ms. Wendy Marcus from the Central Bank of Suriname to present on behalf of the Bank of Suriname. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Wendy Marcus. I will present our experience at the Central Bank of Suriname in implementing a remittance reporting and analysis system for banks and MTOs, and also our experience in capturing and analyzing remittances data during COVID. Next slide, please. Yes. This presentation will include the following topics. Next. In Suriname, we have two formal channels for remittances data. These are through the MTOs and the banks. The share of the MTOs is quite significant. Last year, they accounted for about 80% of the inflows and 90% of the outflows. Currently, we don't capture remittances through informal channels. We are aware that they exist and are working towards the coverage on this area. COVID-19 did not have an impact on our ability to capture this data because the banks and the MTO reported their data more or less on time. Their timeliness was due to the following reasons. First of all, because they submit their data into an application for us. Secondly, the legal framework they have to abide by. And thirdly, our relationship with these stakeholders by effective communication and transparency. Next slide, please. It was a long road from us to implement these web applications. These applications were developed by our ICT department. It took about 2 years to develop. They are managed in-house by these developers. The system generates granular data, which is stored on internal storage. As a result, the data is fully protected. The systems are also quite transparent. An audit log was included in which all actions are traceable. We launched the first edition of the MTO's application about 3 years ago. Before 2010, we received the data in hard copy, which was then manually transferred into an Excel file. This was a very time-consuming process for us. Between 2010 and November 2020, we received the data in Excel file by email. Despite this improvement, there was still need for an application because by that time, we had already developed one for the banks. Finally, in December 2020, we launched the first application for the MTOs. It came with built-in validation checks. For instance, if an MTO would want to submit their data in a template other than the one provided, they would not be able to do so. And also, if they do not fill in all mandatory columns, they would also not be able to submit their data into the application. We also incorporated Power BI in the application to pre-design certain visuals for analysis. All validation that needs to be made is done in the application itself. For the banks, we endured almost the same process. Before 2011, we received the data in hard copy. Starting 2010, we received it in Excel file. 2010 was actually a transitional phase going from hard copy to web application. In 2011, we launched the first application for the banks. This did not go smoothly at all. As a result, we officially used the application in 2013. Finally, in 2021, we launched an updated version for the banks, which came with the same actions as that of the MTOs mentioned above. Next slide, please. Yes. We face quite some challenges in these processes. First of all, we needed ICT developers to develop these applications for us. Secondly, it took a while for all stakeholders to work with the application, and it is also an ongoing process. As mentioned before, our own ICT developers build these applications, so it didn't cost us that much compared to if we had to get developers from outside the organization to develop the applications for us. And also it took a while for all stakeholders to cooperate with us because some of the MTOs and the banks did not see the benefits of these applications. Despite these challenges, there are quite some benefits. First of all, efficiency is improved. Now we don't have to manually transfer data into Excel file, so we have more time left for analysis. As mentioned also, the applications are quite transparent. The central bank is accountable for the information. The data and its visuals are readily available after being submitted into the application. And also our timeliness is improved. This is actually the main reason why COVID-19 did not have an impact on our ability to capture data. The applications are accessible from anywhere as long as there is internet connection. So even though people work from their homes during COVID, they were still able to submit their data, and we from the statistics department were able to capture the data and compile our statistics. Next, please. Yes. Quarterly, we produce 3 outputs with this data. These are the balance of payments, personal transfers by source, and personal transfers by country. These 3 outputs are available on our website. Next slide. Yes. During and after COVID, we noticed an increase in remittances flow. This may be to the following reasons. First of all, travel restrictions. As family members weren't able to visit, we assumed that the money they would give in person during family visits was now sent during either the MTOs or the banks. And secondly, due to the deterioration of the Surinamese economy, around 2020, inflation started to rise in Suriname, which is also reflected in an increase in livelihood expenses of the people. So it could also be possible that more remittances are sent to support family members in need during this difficult time. Next slide, please. Yes. Some concluding remarks. The web applications improved our efficiency, the quality of our data, and also the timeliness. Human resources, capacity training, and budget are key factors. As mentioned, we needed developers to develop these applications for us. And also, it is an ongoing process to train stakeholders to use these applications. Adjustment, update, improvement of the web application is an ongoing process. Also, during the use of the applications, you might come across some issues which needs further improvement. Human errors are also limited with built-in validation checks. And there is more time left for analysis due to partially automation of the application. Next slide, please. So this is the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm looking forward to answering them in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marcos, very much for the very well presented the experiences from your bank on measuring remittances. We welcome all participants of the webinar to post their questions in the chat or in the question section for the sections where they can post their questions, and we will be addressing some of the questions by the end of this webinar. And for the questions that we cannot be addressed at that point, we will reply later on with the recording of the webinar and other materials from the webinar to the questions that we cannot address today. I would like to continue with the presentation from Ms. Hurtado. The floor is yours. Mr. Hurtado.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, or good afternoon. Today, I will be sharing Salvador's experience and the implementation of the International Transaction System, specifically with regards to the measurement of family remittances. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. With regards to the background and context, we were using a balance that was used until the year 2000. We had an exchange rate, but after that, we started working with a dollarized exchange rate. This was then converted into an international transaction notification system. Up until that point, all of the notifications were printed out, were hard copies, and it was like that until 2017, when we started implementing the city system, which is our ITRS system. The year before the system was implemented, a regulation was approved, a regulation that regulates those who participate in the market when cash is being handled on either points of the transaction. That made it possible for us to include this system. This was very positive, given that remittances in El Salvador are about 24% of our GDP. That's in data from 2022, and 1 of every 4 homes receive family remittances. With regards to the city system, the SITI system, we can see on the next slide, please go to the next slide. We can see how it is composed of 2 modules. One is the transactions modules, which registers or records all the transactions when a bank participates in each point of the transactions. This makes it possible for us to identify remittances from one bank account to the next, as well as the deposits that are made, and by someone in El Salvador, and we can also obtain data from pensions paid from external governments to people from El Salvador who had sometimes worked in a different country. Now, in the remittance modules, we record all the transactions that are channeled through money transfer companies. On the next slide, we can see a framework for the international transaction system. There is information that is available every day. In both cases, we upload an XML file, and once it is in the central bank's system, it goes through a process of validation. Then it goes through the international transaction system through that module, and after that it goes through the remittances module. Those remittances that are then recorded are transferred to the remittances module. It's possible that some of them may not meet the necessary requirements and will go back to the transactions module. For example, there are cash estimates which are related to wallet remittances. There is also information about cryptocurrency wallets, which represent a small group, but it is an important achievement for us to integrate that into our system as well. We're also using cell phone recharges and data pertaining to that, all of that is found in the remittances module, and that comprises our national data. We'll go to the next slide. Where you can see an asterisk that only applies to operations that are greater than $5,000. We include the date of the transaction, the value, the origin and destination country, the beneficiary, the local agent, companies for money transfers, cash payments, the currency in which the remittance was made. And for larger transactions, the client has to choose a code, a catalog concept, and add a comment. That makes it possible for us to distinguish transactions that are not remittances. For example, if someone sends money to buy a home, that will be under their name. We'll go to the next slide, please. The SITI has several functions, for example, validation, which I already mentioned. There's a review area where there are several procedures that can take place to review data. There is a transaction summary screen. There's also data delivery monitoring, which takes place every day, as I previously mentioned. There's also a documentation area where we can upload instructions from the bank, technical details, as well as concept documents for each of the catalog codes. There's a specific area for those catalogs. There's also a registration section for the procedures that they want to take place, for example, if they are missing any data. And it all takes place through Power BI. We also extract data with other tools. For example, when we need more detailed information. We'll go to the next slide, please. All of that information has made it possible to have a much more detailed look at these statistics. We can also combine geographic information. We can then display this on a map, and we can also include urban areas, rural areas, and intermediaries. It also makes it possible to do a daily analysis of the different kinds of behaviors of the remittances. For example, the impact of natural phenomena, lockdowns, and other internal interruptions. For example, if in the origin country there are current problems that the society is facing, we will be able to see that reflected in the data. We also have partial data that's available the 15th of every month. The information is very useful for the whole market. We can see the pattern in the remittances at a weekly level and of course at a monthly level as well. We can see the data as it relates to the market. That's something that is always requested. It also makes it possible for us to see the origin countries for each municipality. In some cases, we see that the United States is much lower for some municipalities than it is for the entire country. And all of the data that we publish, which is available for each municipality or each department. In countries where we receive a high level of remittances, one way of measuring the remittances makes it possible for us to have accessible to much more reliable data. And it also can represent a reduction in mistakes and human errors. As we can see, there are different applications for public policy.
Finally, we would like to share that we want to present in June of this year. We are going to also show the gender of the recipients, which will be very interesting, the type of person, natural or legal, and this may subtract some kinds of remittances, but also identify collective remittances. There's not. We will also be able to see not only the person sending money, but also the person receiving. We will be able to also have an approximate number of beneficiaries based on the identification documents that we will have in the databases. We will also have information about the state of origin of remittances in the United States. This is all that I had to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurtado, for presenting the system that you have, El Salvador has in place for measuring remittances, and for sharing your experience and also the plans for improvement in the future for your system. Without taking much more time, I would like to give the floor to the next presenter from Dominican Republic. The floor is yours. Please continue. Yes, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to thank the UNCDF for the invitation to participate in the webinar. We believe it's very important to have this at least short sort of event so we can share what we've been doing in the past couple of years, especially after the pandemic, and how what changes we have implemented in our systems and so on. So I'd like to move to the next slide, please. Okay, so basically we're going to be looking at the legal basis for the data collection that we have at the central bank. I'm going to go over how we collect the data through the banking system, short overview of the remittance inflows that we have. And we were asked to participate, showing a little bit of what we get from data based on the sex of the recipient. So I'm going to cover shortly what we can see, or a little bit of the insight that we can get from our data. So we can move to the next one. So basically, the central bank is the institution that's responsible for the regulation of the financial systems, and we also are charged by law to compile the balance of payment statistics. All of this was established in the monetary law of 2002. The foreign exchange regulation that was established in 2006 and updated recently in 2019 is the one that defines the market participants, including the MTOs, the money transfer operators, and it also establishes the data reporting to the monetary authority from MTOs and from financial institutions, commercial banks, and so on. So we can move to the next one. Okay, so our collecting the data through the banking system, we get statistics for both, obviously, flows, both flows, inflows and outflows from the formal remittances. Now, the data source for these formal remittances is from the Superintendency of Banking's reporting system. The data is from the central bank, but we use their framework to get the banks to report to us. So all the participants in the exchange market have to report their daily transactions, and they do so on a weekly basis. So every week we have daily data for all the participants in the market, which is very useful. It helps a lot with accuracy and timeliness of the data. That also helps us have a preliminary look at what the numbers may be. Also, we get very granular data. We have information on the sex of the recipients, the country of origin or the destination, the province in our country that is receiving the the transfer and others. So that's very helpful for us. And the data from the system we complement with surveys and estimations for informal flows, both inflows and outflows informally. We have pocket remittances from travelers who come in from abroad, for example. And since we share a border with Haiti and most of our informal workforce or temporary workforce sends money back home. So that's one of the most important countries that we send our remittances out. We've been collecting data through the banking system starting in 2014 with data from 2010. Prior to this, we used to have hard copy reporting in the central bank, and we put in the data in our databases straight from the forms from the banks and from the money transfer operators. So you can imagine that using this data collection system is improved incredibly, both the accuracy and the timeliness of the reporting of the data. We can move on to the next one. A little bit of a general overview, you can see how remittances have evolved in the first graph year over year since 2010, reaching a peak in 2021, right after the pandemic. And everybody was expecting come 2020 that remittances would fall with the start of that pandemic. And what we saw was the opposite entirely. And that may be due to several reasons. Like one of the things that Wendy was saying is that people couldn't travel home. So they had extra funds that instead of using them to travel, they would send home. But not less important, obviously, is the government assistance that was provided in developed economies, especially the United States and Europe, that increased the income that was available to send back home. And we saw that all through 2020 and 2021 with a lot of migrants sending that extra income back home. And we were expecting over 2022, after these economic aid programs stopped, to have less remittances, closer to the levels possibly of 2018, 2019. And regardless, we observed flows of around $800 million a month, which just show that once our diaspora or migrants are start sending a specific amount of cash back home, sometimes it's just very difficult to start sending less money, or since the employment situation, specifically in the United States, improved so much for the services sector, which is where we have a lot of our migrants employed, they managed to get a good position to keep sending cash back home, right? By looking at the data by country, United States accounts for 84%, Spain accounts for about 6%. So between both of them, that's around 90% of the inflows or remittances that we get in the country. Remittances have accounted for around 10% of GDP over the last couple of years. They used to be around 7%, 8%, but after the pandemic, that value increased up to about 10%. And income from remittances surpassed income from tourism services, which is very important for our economy. Of course, this is due to travel restrictions and so on from the pandemic, but still the flows from remittances have been very important for our country in the past couple of years. So we can move on to the next one. And this is the previous one, there we go. This is a very, I wouldn't say preliminary, but I'd say these are our insights of what we can get from the data based on the sex of the recipient, because there's not much hard evidence for what we have seen. If we look at the graph, we can see that the proportion of male recipients from two countries, Spain and the United States, like I said, they account for about 90% of the remittances that we receive. So around 41 to 45% were male recipients, and that increased up from 41 to 53, and from 45 to almost 59% over the past couple of years. This has been a shift in the recipients of remittances, where traditionally migrants send money back home to their mothers, right? So the part of what we believe can be seen here is that there has been a change in the migratory pattern. Basically, women have been migrating, we believe women have been migrating more to developed economies where they get employment in the service sector, in traditionally female jobs like nursing, geriatric care. Some of them work in beauty parlors and so on. And that's one of the possible explanations that we have for the shift. On the other hand, there's a lot more financial inclusion in males in our country. So they may be the ones with access to the financial system to withdraw these remittances for the household, even if the intended recipient is a woman. Like I said, usually the mother, in this case, the mother of the migrant is going to be the main recipient, right? So one of the things is the financial inclusion in males, and also it makes more sense for a man to go and retrieve the money from the money transfer operator or the banks due to safety issues, just as well. A very important point that we have to make is in our country, some of the remittance operators, some of the money transfer operators have a delivery system where they send in a motorcycle or in a vehicle, they send the cash to the person who's receiving it. So the migrant can decide to send the money over to our country, but not only to the commercial establishment itself, but deliver it straight to the residence of the person who's receiving it. So that's also a very important characteristic of our market. Again, these are 2 or 3 of the ideas that we may have about the shift in the recipients being male or more men now. But we do need to get more research done to have a lot of hard evidence on why this is happening. But this is what we've been seeing, and this is one of the main points that we can work on, having that data with that detail of sex of persons who are receiving it, right? Thank you. So next. And I've left links in our presentation. I'm sure they're going to be pasted in the chat now to our external sector statistics, both available in Spanish and English, and our monthly remittance report. I left the image here. It's available only in Spanish, however, but we do have this published monthly, and you can see the extent of the granularity of our data in our webpage. So I hope this is very helpful for everyone. And again, thank you for having us here today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Victor. Thank you for sharing your experiences on measuring remittances data, and thank you also for bringing that focus and that attention to the gender, view of how that plays a role in remittances, sending and receiving, and also in the process of compiling statistics for the remittances. I'm sure this is one of the areas that has a great importance for these data, and we're very thankful for having you here. And yeah, we'll address if there are any questions for you later in the chat. I would like to continue. Yeah, thank you again. So with a presentation from Angola. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibish. I would like to welcome all here. Can you go to the next slide, please? I'm Sarina Pimentel Alves from the BOP and IIP sector of the National Bank of Angola. I'm here to present the experience of the National Bank of Angola, and since I am the last one here to present, I'll try to not take so long and to present it clearly as my colleagues have done before. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So according to the Balance of Payments and International Investment Position 6th edition manual, personal transfers will consist of all current transfers in cash or in kind, made or received by residents, households to or from non-resident households. So therefore, they will include all current transfers, regardless of the sender's source of income, if there is a relationship between the sender and the recipient, and they will target specific needs. They can either be needs such as investment, food, the acquisition of different services that are provided in the country, and these flows will contribute substantially to the development of the country that is receiving the flows. Next slide, please, Ibish. So our experience under the law 2421 of October 18th, it's the law of BNA. The National Bank is responsible for the compilation of the country's balance of payments, which has as one of its components the remittances account. For this, we use two sources or two systems. We use one that is the financial institutions portal. It's called PIF. It's these are letters in Portuguese, where remittance companies and foreign exchange offices report to the BNA remittances and transactions that are carried out on behalf of their customers. Until now, we have 37 financial institutions that are using this system. On the other side, we have the Integrated Foreign Exchange Operations System. It's called CINOC, where commercial banks will record personal transfers and other transfers carried out at their branches. We have currently 23 banks reporting through this system. As for the methodology that we use the BPM6 guidelines and the remittance guide for compilers and users. Next slide, please. So how it is collected, the data through these two systems? They are simple systems that were built internally. It is an integrated system that aggregates the information from various areas and allow us to download the information in different formats, either in Excel or Word or PDF, depending on the information that we want to follow up or to analyze. These two systems were created to respond to different needs. Such as the compilation of the balance of payments, the banking and non-banking supervision, AML, CTF, financial inclusion, and other needs that are presented. Therefore, we are allowed to use filters so we can build our query and create the report that we need. And the information created as we need, it can be used by various departments, such as the Department of Banking and Non-Banking Supervision, as it was said before, the Financial Conduct Department, Financial Inclusion, Markets, Financial Stability, Statistics, and Credit Monitoring. We have we have a granularity that we can see on the reports that are generated in this system, and we can analyze the information by type of issuing entity, type of receiving entity, withdrawal, deposit, the country of origin or destination, and the transfer mechanism as the purpose of the remittance. To better use these two systems, there is capacity building sessions that are carried out to institutions on a punctual basis, and there is a team normally with one person from each department that works together to improve and develop the systems with the needs that are provided and that they are not included previously on the team. So next slide, please. Okay. So we still have challenges, as many of the countries. One of our biggest challenges, it is to assess the magnitude of the transactions that take place outside the financial systems. It is to make the clear distinction between the formal and informal sector, or the remittances that pass through the formal and the informal channels. The second challenge that we face and that we are working, we are always working to overcome and to improve the systems that we have, is to have the distinction between resident and non-residents, because it can be a challenge, because sometimes some institutions may not upload the information with the clarity that we need to analyze if it is a transaction made by a resident and a non-resident. So there is a constant interaction with the institutions, and there is a constant interaction between departments to overcome all these challenges. To state that, we have the published data on our website. We publish our external data on a quarterly basis with a 60-day lag on our website and other dissemination vehicles. We have a report on remittances and other personal transfers that is prepared same as the basis as quarterly, and it's available at the link provided here. So thank you very much for your time. This was our experience. We are looking for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reina, for presenting on behalf of your bank, and for sharing from the bank the experience of Banco Nacional de Angola on the main channels and systems that they use for measuring remittances, and also for sharing the challenges facing when measuring those data. I would like to now pass the floor to my colleague Paloma to continue with the remarks on behalf of UNCDF. Paloma, can you continue, please?
So thank you, Ivish. And yeah, my name is Paloma Monroy. I'm a senior remittances policy specialist at the UNCDF, and I will take care of the second part of this session, mainly questions and answers, and also report and concluding remarks. So I've seen that our wonderful panelists have been taking care of the questions from the audience, and so while the team selects another question so we can drop them, I will start with two flash questions to the panelists. So in a single word, what is the main benefit of using technology for remittances and balance of payments data collection and analysis? So maybe we can start with Victor.
Hi, of course. In one word, the benefit of using the technology is accuracy. In our case, I could say timeliness and so on, but accuracy mainly. And
maybe Sarina.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Sarina, one word.
Okay, so I cannot use the same word as Victor, but I would like to. So I'll keep yours, accuracy and quality. It's always better for us to rely on the systems to have the data, the best data that we can. Thank you.
Maybe Wendy, 2 words. What is the main benefit of using technology for data collection?
For Suriname, I will say timeliness of the data. We receive the data on time to compile our statistics.
And Xiomara?
One word that describes the benefits of technology: to measure remittances data. Xiomara, can you hear us? My apologies, says Xiomara. I didn't hear the question. In one word, Xiomara, how would you define the main benefits of using technology to measure remittances. It makes it possible for us to have much more access to the information that we need in order to carry out a more detailed analysis about family remittances. This information is also very useful for companies that participate in the market, not only for the public sector and for the central bank. Thank you, Xiomara. That was just one word.
And now maybe in a single word, how would you define the difficulty level of using technology for remittances or balance of payments data collection? Easy, medium, not so hard, hard. So the central banks also were looking at the experience. So in a single word, how would you define the difficulty level of using technology at the central bank? So Victor, again, you are the first. Easy, medium, not so hard, hard.
Easy. It's a matter of coordinating with the other institutions, but once you have everything in place, it just flows, which is excellent.
Sarina.
So I'll go with medium. I'll go with medium because there is always some dependency of a third party that may not always insert or upload the information with the accuracy that it's needed.
Wendy, what do you think? Easy, medium, not so hard, hard?
For us, it's not so hard. As long as all the stakeholders know how to use the application, it goes smoothly. One problem is if there's no internet connection, you won't be able to use the application.
Xiomara, en una palabra, ¿cómo define?
In one word, how do you define the difficulty for the central bank? The difficult part is creating the system. In the day-to-day, it's much easier, especially because we have a law that makes it mandatory to provide this information.
Thank you. I see in the chat that my panelists have been responding to the questions. So maybe, we only have 3 minutes, and I would like to share the report that all my panelists have been. So maybe we're gonna respond all the questions and share with all the panelists and all the attendees today. So maybe next slide, Ivish. Oh, maybe the link. Also, I have the pleasure of sharing the learnings of capturing remittances data from central banks, also central bank in Latin America, Central Bank of Chile, Honduras, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Paraguay, Suriname, Trinidad, Tobago, and Uruguay. All these insights, all these learnings, all this information is for the public good. So you have here the link. And also you want to look at the more resources from UNCDF based on the consultation from these 70 regulators and national statistical offices. You can check our migrantmoney website. There is the link. And yeah, we're here. So we would like to analyze on time. And maybe 2 more minutes. I don't want you're very busy people. So maybe I will start. Thank you, the panelists and the institution for these extraordinary valuable insights. My reflection is during the consultation with these central banks and national statistical offices, many central banks mentioned that the trade-off between the availability of detailed transaction level remittances data and the cost to assess it. But today we provided specific evidence on how some countries, some central banks have solved this problem. The presentation from our wonderful panelists suggests that this journey may present significant difficulties, but the high granularity of remittances payment datasets presents many advantages. So the Central Bank of Suriname show how implementing web application is improving data efficiency, quality, and timelessness. Human resources, capacity, training, and budget are also key factors mentioned by the Central Bank of Suriname for Wendy. The Central Bank of El Salvador shared the journey from paper-based email to automated and efficiency So it allows to process the reported data and how the detailed and good quality data allow the Central Bank of El Salvador to obtain relationships between variables and analysis of behaviors. And this is a continuous process. As you see, Xiomara mentioned that this is a continuous and they are still improving the systems. The Central Bank of Dominican Republic shared the decision to use another systems in the Central Bank, the internal resources that are already available, and the experience of using this information, and in particular, how every day they are targeting and challenging, and how this data, for instance, now they're analyzing data based on the sex of the recipient. Central Bank of Angola shared experience, opportunities, and challenges on information at the level of transaction. This level of transaction allows in analyzing information by entity, by type of receiving entity, by deposit, by means of sending. And in particular, I would like to mention something that Sarina mentioned, the importance of capacity building. I think this is something that I also have been hearing, capacity building. So thank you so much at the Central Bank of Suriname, Salvador, Dominican Republic, and Angola. Thank you, Wendy, Xiomara, Peter, and Sarina. Thank you to the interpreters, wonderful. Thank you to my team and the wonderful audience. We have today more than 150 participants. Hope you can learn something. I learned a lot, and see you tomorrow. Don't forget to join tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a wonderful panel of 3 central banks who are going to show the methods for capturing informal remittances. So I thank you so much and have a wonderful day.